I had a stream that you probably should have tuned into. You can go watch it if you're a member of the channel for sure. But it was a special stream that I did because I hadn't seen you guys in a while because, we hadn't been doing the show. I talked about this whole scenario, what's going on with a bunch of dude bros on Reddit banded together and took on the stock market. And the cathedral wasn't too happy about that. In fact, they're pretty pissed off. And there are so many things that I want to take from that I want to discuss, and certainly in this video, but or rather in this segment. But it's less about what's happening and more about the reason why and what that could mean going into the future. When it comes to this particular, not just this particular subject, but the state of American culture, if you will. So I want to be clear. Like, I'm not like, I get the stock market serves a purpose. You know what I'm saying? But it wouldn't be allowed to be as volatile as it is if the money was sound. So if you've been following me on social media, particularly Twitter, you see me talk about that. Wall Street is not a free market. It's never been a free market. It never pretended to be a free market by any means. But it has made a lot of people rich. It serves a purpose, and not everybody that's involved, even definitely when it comes to hedge funders, they're not all bad people. Now, what did happen is that it was treated like a club. Certainly when you're dealing with like big money, right? It's a club of folks that do that for a living and have made billions of dollars, billions and billions. They made a lot of money off of it. Okay. And what happened with the dude bros getting in on it, they outwitted people that do this for a living. They got out traded. So they're frustrated. They don't like that happened. And you see, when I talk about the cathedral, you have to look at agents and state agents, not just as, which we'll talk about one in particular, but it's not just people that work for the government per se, like hold an actual government position, as in that's their job. Some extends to the corporate press. They're part of the cathedral as well. What was the first damn thing they rolled out there? Like clockwork. It was easy. It was predictable. They rolled out the cathedral leaders, put out their new update. They installed it, and then they ran it out. What was the first thing that they went after? Well, the people that are responsible for this, it's a bunch of racists, white supremacists, Nazis, actual journalists. They come out, they say, well, I can confirm on Telegram the Nazis are involved with this. And it's like, that's their go-to. We saw that with the decentralization alt-tech movement that's happening right now. They can't stop you. You beat them. You beat them at a game that they've been playing, right? In some cases, you were incentivized because of their bad behavior. So you beat them at their game, and then what do? They roll out the update and they say, hey, well, it's a bunch of white supremacists. What they're trying to do is condemn you for participating in it. That's all. But that's what the cathedral members did. It's because they got outwitted. They got out traded. That's a bad thing. But you saw some people. Wall Street, by the way, I believe the ratio was like 5-1, if I'm not mistaken. When we talk about these guys that were supporting these, Uber firms, big firms, and what have you, was in support of Joe Biden. My guess is what's going to happen out of this is that they're going to regulate the shit out of it even more. And they're going to criminalize their behavior. Elizabeth Warren. Talk 3:30 p.m. She went to talk on CNBC, talk about GameStop and how it's long past time for regulators to wake up and prevent market manipulation. It's funny that they use that term in the future. Cathedral members don't like this. Okay? That frustrates them when they get beat at their own game. And a lot of people, when we talk about market manipulation, when you talk about, the only reason why this is even allowed to happen is because the money is so not sound, right? But when you consider what the Federal Reserve does in combination with the Treasury, it is literal market manipulation. Literal market, that's exactly what it is. They devalue your money with pumping the money out of thin air, inflationary spending, deficit spending, which is they're allowed to do that because of the Federal Reserve in combination of the Treasury to monetize their debt. They manipulate the market. When it comes to that, definitely when it comes to like inflation, if they pump like a bunch of new money in a print out of nowhere, who's the first people that gets a hold of that? The banks. So you have Wall Streeters calling for bailouts, calling for regulations, with the SEC or they want all of them to be involved to stop people from doing this because it's a form of market manipulation, which I won't say that it isn't. Again, the only reason why it's allowed to exist is because the money's jacked. But that's at nobody's fault but the state. The money's jacked because of them. And again, even then, when you talk about hedge fund, this is what they do. You know what I mean? Like they make lots of money off of it. You wanted in on the action. The cathedral said, no, wait a minute. This isn't right. And, we know what happened with Robin Hood, right? It wasn't just Robin Hood, which I'm finding out, but, with the Robin Hoods of the world, Robin Hood has been, their CEO was going around doing their, which is funny how that site was supposedly founded upon letting people trade. They decided no. It was in some instances, if I'm not mistaken, they were forced selling. People that put it in AMC or AMC GameStop, GME, if I'm not mistaken. If you put it in any of that, you in some cases and obviously you couldn't buy, right? They put a restriction, cap or rather restriction. So the question and the golden question is, depends on who you ask, who the hell was responsible for that? Well, it seems if you follow the money, it's more of, they would make the claim that it's not the case of, people within the market demanding that the big money movers that have, like Citadels of the world that have attributed to a lot of the revenue by way of Robinhood. But let them tell it. It seems like it's more pressure from the regulators. Now, I'm not here to discuss. I don't really even care, to be honest, because, again, we're talking about monopoly money right now. Anyway, this is what they do. And I know a lot of people are getting in on it, and if you can get in and get a little money out of it, I mean, good for you. But what's most important to me, and I know, right, 9 minutes after I've sort of rambled on about this, but y'all have been asking me about this subject, so I get to ramble. Okay? Shut up. But what you are seeing is that there's a lot more power in the individuals than they realize. A bunch of dude bros in a Reddit forum just derailed the stock market. That in itself is beautiful, but it's an example, and this is why it's important for me to highlight this as an example of people being able to take it to the cathedral. Non-violently at that. When we talk about decentralization and all of this stuff, I always say that it only sounds unrealistic until it's not realistic. If enough people want it, it happens. Simple as that. It's only unrealistic because I talk about it. You didn't hear a bunch of other people talking about it, and you think, well, it just can't happen. Well, no, it can happen. Some education that we have to do here, but yes, it can happen. There's a lot of power in the individuals. Partially what excites me so much about the all-tech revolution. See, the cathedral members love the status quo, and a lot of people want the status quo. They benefit from the status quo. A lot of rich folk have benefited from it. A lot of politicians have benefited from the status quo. The reason why the cathedral is so frustrated right now was because you bucked the system. They don't like that. You got in on it and you bucked it. That frustrates them. That angers them. That makes them mad. So probably out of it, they'll come out a lot of regulations, a lot more regulations, licensing probably, something like that to avoid things like this happening. Because they don't want you in on it. Stock market has been one of the most best kept secrets because the average so much money to be made there, and it's if you know what you're doing. And on average, most people have no idea how that even works, what that even is. You got in on it. They got frustrated. A lot of people got intrigued by it. And again, it was coordinated, albeit it happened. But it happened. So there can be a buck to the system as it exists. It's just that enough people have to want it. And this is why I say that the battle is always a cultural one. It's not a political one. It's a cultural one. The political stuff is the lagging indicator. But I will end on this note. For you guys who talk about all of these stonks, you're seeing it play out real time. That Wall Street is not on side of the libertarian. Wall Street is not on side of the people that don't want the state in the way. They've never been. Again, 5-to-1 ratio of them supporting guys like Biden anyway, the ones that do get involved in politics. But that's never been the case. These guys live in a fake dimension. I was posting this on, if you watch my Twitter, you follow me, I was going back and forth with a bunch of communists that just live in a different dimension when they say, like the guy said, the free market is, what did he say? He said something along the lines, the free market is something that they've sold to the poor. So they participate in the system. And I say, bitch, where you see that at? Where you see that at? I don't see it. What board members, just like one CEO of a big company that supports liberty, that supports free markets. For the most part, their board members are supporters. A lot of them are Democrats. What are you talking about? The regulations benefit them, and you're seeing them call for it right now. And a lot of people in Wall Street are calling for bailouts. What are you talking about? They're not on our side. This is what you're seeing it play out in real time, an example of why we want the state completely out of the way, because we know who it benefits. Crackhead ass communists and socialists, they conflate capitalism with making money, which is not even what it is. Has nothing. This is why when people define it as profit, it's incorrect in the modern sense in terms of how people advocate for it. Austrian economists, Chicago economists, not Karl Marx. I'm saying in the modern sense. So you're arguing against someone that doesn't exist, rather, is what you're arguing against. Capitalism has nothing to do with that. Capitalism is the private ownership of goods and services and the free and voluntary exchange of those private goods and services. That's what it is. Well, I give you something for free or I sell it, it exists under capitalism, right? It can exist rather under capitalism, but it's not buying, selling. That's capital. That's not what a rich person, that's not what it is. These people aren't free marketers. They've never been free marketers, but they're not free marketers. They're simply not. They love regulation. Quite oftentimes, they are the ones who lobbied for it because it benefits them the most. These uber rich cats who manipulate the market for a living, they benefit the most from the state being in control of the money, but also with all of this regulation. We're talking these banks, man. That's who benefits from the state being in control of the money because they touch it first. But nonetheless, they're not free market. You're seeing it. Why would they be calling for regulation and bailout? This is why communists don't make sense, because they'll sit up here in any given time. that you talk about deregulation, they will consider that a capitalist proposal. But when it comes to bailouts and people wanting regulations that benefit them because they're rich and they don't want y'all playing the same game, now all of a sudden it's not capitalism. Or rather, excuse me, now all of a sudden it is capitalism as well. So deregulation is capitalism and regulate. Pick one. They don't know what it is. So stop trying to pin them. These guys have traditionally supported authoritarian leftists, but you're seeing it right now. Supporting the same thing that you guys support is just it's welfare statism for them. Right? It's welfare statism for them. That's all. Real welfare statism for rich folk. That's all it is. Socialism nonetheless. They're not on our side. You're seeing it played out in real time. So please, if you're one of those who are sitting here acting like Wall Street is the beacon of the free marketer, I say, bitch, where? Find me them. Find me them. You got like the Whole Foods CEO, and that's about it. Find me them. Find them, please. Find them, the ones that are calling consistently for deregulation. Why do all of these big companies, why do all of these big boards went out there and, for example, not big boards, or rather the boards of these companies go out there and they support Democratic politicians? Why was Joe Biden the Wall Street president? Huh? Explain that to me. If they are it's the fault of the libertarians that they exist in the capacity that they exist in. That's a fake narrative that makes no sense, easily disproven. It's ahistorical. But you're seeing it play out real time, and I just got to be the guy to point it out.